All right, let's go ahead and call this work session to order. I'm just going to hand it on over to Alex.
Pass the baton. Yeah, I'll be passing that to Lori.
Oh, that's fine.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, Council, and Planning Commissioners. This is our first work session with Council and Planning Commission for the 50-year plan. And tonight we have Margaret Raymond from Echo Northwest, and we also have Anais Mete from 3J, and they are acting also as a sub to Echo Northwest and partner on this plan. So that we have plenty of time, I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to them, and they can get us started.
Thanks, Lori. So we're here today to really kick off the 50-year plan project with you all. Can you hear me okay? Okay. So the next slide.
Mr. Mayor.
Could you make sure you talk into the microphone so people on the...
It's really not for us. It's just to make sure that your voice picks up. So I know it's super hard to get really,
I'll get
really close.
Close here. Yeah. Okay. All right. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And the next one. We'll do a project overview. And so we just want to talk through some of the objectives of the 50-year plan and what we'll be doing over the course of the next 3-ish years. So we're going to understand how Scappoose may grow over the next 50 years. We'll be informed by discussion with community, with you all, and determining a community vision, updated community vision. Then we'll develop policies that implement that community vision that will include evaluating growth opportunities for employment land, housing land, and other land needs, as well as evaluating the urban growth boundary. And then to integrate recent legislative changes into the development code changes. So as we go through here, we'll have an opportunity for discussion at the end, but if you want to think about what are some of your other desired outcomes of this project that we can discuss later. So next slide. So as Lori mentioned, we have a project team on the consultant side of 2 consultants. We are from Echo Northwest, and so we'll be leading the overall project as well as the technical analysis that I mentioned previously about the land needs and the urban growth boundary expansion. And so Beth Goodman is the project director. She will show up at some other meetings and be involved throughout the project. As I said, I'm the project manager. And then we're also supported by a bunch of other staff from our firm, from economists to other urban planners or more technical staff doing GIS. So you can call on a number of those team members. And then I'll let Anais introduce her team.
Yeah, so we are very excited to be supporting Echo Northwest. So 3J Consulting, we're going to be leading the visioning work for this process, as well as supporting in development code updates, and also comprehensive plan goals and policies, or revisions to your goals and policies of the comp plan. So we'll be doing some community engagement and policy work. We also have some additional staff on hand. We have a pretty deep bench of civil engineers that will be able to view a lot of our work through an engineering lens. And we also, as I mentioned, have code development specialists as well on our team.
Slide. So we view the overall 50-year plan in a number of parts. So we have at the top the community vision, and that's what we'll be starting out with in our first few meetings and community outreach. And the findings and the draft vision and the final vision will feed into the other pieces of the project. So that's the 50-year growth opportunities. So looking at, again, employment land, housing land, which there's a separate analysis, as you might know, going on right now, the housing needs analysis. And so we'll bring in that information when it's ready to be part of the larger 50-year plan. And then we have also look at public and other land needs that don't necessarily fit into employment or housing land, and then have an idea of what's your overall land base and what's your overall land need, and then determine if there needs to be an urban growth boundary analysis. So then those analyses feed into the overall comprehensive plan update, where we look at the comprehensive plan policy and any necessary updates, as well as development code updates. And then those all result in the 50-year plan. And of course, they're all informed by Stakeholder Advisory Committee, decision maker work sessions like this, and other community input with the broader community. the components of the project. The next slide, we'll talk a little bit about process. So next slide. So this slide shows the overall project schedule from now in 2022 through June of 2024. That's our project schedule, so a little bit less than 3 years. And that's also on the big sheet, I believe, that everybody received. And so you can see we're looking at this in those 4 phases: community visioning, 50-year growth opportunities, plan update, and adoption. And throughout that process, we'll have a number of community input opportunities, as well as touch points with you all as decision makers, and then various products that we'll be delivering in both draft and final form throughout. This just shows a little bit of a shorter term schedule from January, when we kicked off the project with staff, through August of this year. And so we'll mostly be working on the community visioning, and then also starting the 50-year growth opportunities analyses, doing some work in the background. And then you can see by the 4th advisory committee is when we'll start to bring some of those results to the SAC. And so there's also, the other community events like the annual town meeting in April, as well as an open house in July, and then the other SAC meetings and another work session with you all in July. Those are some things to look forward to over the next few months, and I'll turn it over to Anais to talk about the SAC.
Great, thank you. So as you saw in that schedule, there's quite a bit happening between now and July. So I'm going to walk through a couple of things. First of all, your stakeholder advisory committee. So I understand that you will be confirming a roster for that stakeholder advisory committee in early March. We are looking forward to having a number of meetings with them throughout this long process. 3-year process is a pretty important project for stakeholder advisory committees. So they will be meeting 12 times across the 3-year project life cycle or life plan. They are meant to represent a broad cross-section of community interests, agency partners, and service providers. And we are really hoping to build a culture of collaboration with the Stakeholder Advisory Committee. We will very much be relying on them to review our work products, guide outreach efforts, and also make recommendations to Planning Commission and City Council. Next slide. Here are some of the objectives that we are looking to use the Stakeholder Advisory Committee for. So as I mentioned, always reviewing all of our work products, advising us on some technical issues. That's why we have some agency partners on the committee. And of course, we are really going to rely on them to help push our outreach and communications. We're really hoping the Stakeholder Advisory Committee can help us connect with the communities we want to be connecting with throughout this process. And so they'll be helping us in getting the word out about all sorts of opportunities to get involved, encourage community members to participate in the process, and also act as champions of this project. So an important role. Phase
Hold on.
1.
I just noticed a break, and I have a question about the SAC, if that's
Please.
okay. I'm the liaison between the city council and the school board, or the school district, sorry. And so we were, given the task to find someone to represent the school district. Just hearing you out here on this 3-year commitment, I personally have a bit of a concern if it is a school board member, which is the person that we have reached out to, or, we reached out to their collective body. But terms end, new people come in. And a lot of questions as I sat with this packet since we've had it do seem, with these special districts, these other agencies, we need to have like technical information, stats. And I don't think that school board members are necessarily privy to those things. And so I'm just wondering, Isaac, if I'm happy to collaborate with you on inserting ourselves again with the school district and maybe finding someone that is a staff member of the school district rather than a school board member that's elected and things change. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Are there
I would say though, to your point, Counselor Greisen, that if we need data that only school district personnel would have, we can reach out to them specifically for that. There will likely come a time when we need information from them, especially in regards to like their future planning endeavors and how much land they think they're going to need for future schools, things like
Those are
that.
very technical questions.
Correct. We need, and that's based on technical data that they either will have or may not have. I had heard they were launching into.
They are,
Okay.
yeah,
Hopefully that will align.
finally. Yeah. Okay, so, but then my other concern is perhaps terms are, you know, maybe only another year into this. I'm not speaking on behalf of this person. I'm just saying we need a commitment by one person for 3 years, right? And would you like I'm just curious because it's my responsibility to kind of insert
Yeah.
myself into that and make sure that we find someone that's reliable and present and continues the work. And I don't doubt that this person wouldn't continue that, but then they're not representing the school district anymore if they are a board member or not. I'm curious. I'm happy to
Yeah.
work through it. Mhm. Okay. Fantastic. Just to represent, perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to
That's
make sure that you had what you
Yeah.
needed, and if we need to
Yeah, I think
change anything.
having representation is first and foremost the most important. And then the other thing to keep in mind is that we will always have the opportunity to do more targeted outreach to particular people that have particular sets of information
Sure.
or can provide an alternative perspective. So there's a lot of opportunity to work with one person, but then also work with multiple folks
Perfect.
that represent the school district. So
Thank you.
absolutely.
I'll just add, for example, one of the big parts of that other land need or the public land need is to talk to directly all of those various public entities because some of that information isn't
Sure.
gained from just not talking to somebody. So we usually do reach out to the school district as part of that process.
I would say also, the stakeholder advisory committee members, we're not going to put them on, like they don't have to provide they don't
Sure.
need to be responsible for everything.
This is a big goal of ours as
Yeah.
a city, and this is very important to us. And I just want to make sure that you have what you need.
Yeah.
That was
absolutely.
my moment to just ask.
Great. Yeah, they definitely have a big role, but they aren't carrying all of that on their shoulders, and will certainly be looking
Sure.
to their other, to provide more feedback as well. All right, I will go into just talking a little bit about what the next 6 months look like. We're calling this phase 1, developing the 50-year Scappoose vision. So the key components of this work that we are just kicking off now, first and foremost, is developing a communications and outreach strategy. And that is going to help guide our interactions with the public, with our various stakeholders, with the intention of creating multiple opportunities over the next 6 months for discussion, knowledge sharing, and problem solving with the community and all the stakeholders. That will result in a 50-year community vision that will also guide the technical analysis in the project by providing input about community preferences and values. So, our strategy and some of the activities that we're looking forward to. So, in any community visioning work, it's always highly visible and very interactive with the community. This is probably one of the most fun kind of phases of work because you get to engage in conversation and discussion with friends and family members. So, we are looking to host and design a variety of different activities to understand community desires, preferences, and priorities about the future of Scappoose. And all of these values, priorities, preferences, those will be synthesized into themes that will then constitute a vision statement for the 50-year plan. Some of the key questions in that blue box, just a smattering of examples of what visioning questions look like. So we're really trying to understand, where are we now? Where are we going? Where do we want to be? How do we get there? Who should we make sure we're engaging with? And how do we want to all be involved? So those are kind of the cornerstone questions of any visioning phase. So as I mentioned, lots of activities. We really want to focus on going to where people already are. So that includes having things like community conversations, surveys. We were talking about having a little photo submission activity, not contest. We're also going to be hosting an open house. And in addition, we're going to be having a workshop at the annual town meeting. We're actually really excited about your city's annual town meeting. It's an really awesome event, and really happy to see that it gets such great attendance. So we're really going to try and use that opportunity to present this project to the community and kick off the engagement work with the community. Next slide. Great. Discussion. So we have a number of questions on this slide. Some are pretty high level, some are maybe a little bit more detailed, but we're hoping to use this work session as an opportunity to chat and talk about kind of what we want out of this project, how you want to be involved. A number of questions there. So I will.
And any questions you have for us. So let's just start with the first question. How would you like to be involved? And we don't necessarily have to go round robin. I don't know if you'd have time for every single one of these questions, but if you have a way you typically questions session. People have, okay. So how would you like to be involved? We have a couple of different checkpoints where we'll have a work session with City Council and Planning Commission, and then hearings at the end. But how would you like to use the work sessions, or what other ways would you like to be involved in the process?
I will also clarify just a little bit about the how to be involved. We baked in a number of check-ins with you, and most of those check-ins kind of happen after a ton of work has been done. So our hope is that we get to come back to you and just basically report back on what we've been doing and what we've been hearing and how one thing has led to the next. There's also opportunities to maybe come to you before we do that kind of work and confirm our direction and our process. So there's different strategies of how we can approach or discuss information. That's another element of that.
I would be more willing to share. So my involvement, what I would like for my role, I'm already involved, right? And so again, through those work sessions, yes, report back, progress reports, those are all going to be very helpful. But as you move forward with the community vision and doing the engagement with community members, I would prefer their public events, right? Their public involvement. So based on our availability, we choose to go and engage in those settings. I could be at every one of them, or I'm not going to say I wouldn't be at any, but you know what I'm saying. And so I would say that that's on us to say how engaged we want to be, besides what our role is within this body.
I actually have a question for you. And I'm sure this is probably not the first time you've done a 50-year visioning exercise. Can you share with us sort of some best practices of what you've seen worked successful in terms of engagement on this side and engaging with you? And what would you also like to recommend for us?
Yeah, I'm happy to take that. I actually think that the way we organize this schedule and this scope is a reflection of those best practices. I think engaging with you early and often, and also at key project milestones, is definitely the best way to go. I'm certain that none of us or none of you would like to receive something at the very end of a process and have zero clue about how it started and how it was developed. So I've always seen the best success with projects when we are able to connect with you regularly and share with you what we've done. As I had mentioned, what we've done, where we're going, and how we're connecting the pieces. So that is kind of my best practice, and I think that is baked into this scope.
I have actually a follow-up to your question. I think you actually asked it. 50-year plans. What's our comparables? What's your experience? Because this is all news to a lot of us here, and I think that it should be shared and knowledge. So maybe give us some feedback on our goal.
Yeah, sure. I will say I'm really impressed with the ambition behind a 50-year plan. I personally have never worked with a community that has developed a 50-year vision or plan. I have worked with a number of communities that do long-range visioning and planning through comprehensive work, primarily in the 20-year time frame, which is more common in land use planning in Oregon. So I commend you. I also think it's interesting. There are a number of processes that Margaret spoke to regarding your urban growth boundary. That takes a lot of time. And I think that that 50-year horizon is interesting to be thinking about because when you do talk about urban growth boundaries and the development of urban reserves, that is not necessarily in a 20-year horizon. So anything to add?
Have anything to add? But yeah, we
I appreciate the response. Thank you.
Are we overly ambitious on the 50 years? Would a 20-year time frame, is that something that would be more achievable, not in terms of the project scope, but in terms of laying the foundation, getting all the artifacts, having the final result, and then actioning forward?
Well, I think because you want to do the look at the urban reserves, the 50-year makes sense. And it's not all to say like doing this at a 50-year plan doesn't mean it's just you can't revisit it again before the 50-year time period's over, and you probably won't, or whoever's leading at that time will will pick it up when it makes sense again. And so I think the 50-year time period makes sense.
Good, Pete.
Other than frequent reports from you as to how the committee's doing and into community events as counselors, what other ways other communities been involved, whether it's a 20-year or other counselors been involved, whether it's been a 20-year forecast or a 50-year forecast?
That's a great question. And I think that Commissioner Brandon Lazowski nailed it. I think actually one of the biggest supports that projects can get is when council members and planning commissioners are in front of the community during these big projects and big events. So I think, for example, participation in the annual town meeting, showing up to the open house, being kind of there to represent and support and listen has always been really quite powerful and is always really welcome to be able to see folks' presence at those types of activities.
My point is, I'm taking that for granted. That's something we should be involved with, that, and then also your frequent reports to our council. What other ways have other counselors been involved in other communities?
We also, being able to also share information about activities and events or online surveys among your own networks is very helpful. You certainly have wide networks sitting up here, so we really do, to the extent that we can kind of use your networks to share information is always very, very helpful. Planning staff and even consultant teams, some things that we often struggle with is reaching the communities we want to reach. And so we will certainly look to your leadership to help us connect with those communities. We will do a lot of legwork to try and get there, but more hands to help us spread the word really can do so much of can make quite a difference.
You'd be referring to like social media there primarily, I would assume.
Yeah, it can be social media. It can be, so we help the staff, often when we do activities, we'll prepare some e-blast language and some social media posts and things that are shareable. And it's really would be easy to just forward it or share it yourselves, in whatever capacity you would like, of course. But we prepare language that the city staff then uses to share with the community. You can certainly just.
Speaking of language, are you going to be able to have that in English and in Spanish and other languages for the whole community?
We have those capabilities, and I think it will come to staff scope and budget in terms of having Spanish language translation and/or materials. but I think that is an important aspect of all projects.
I agree.
Yeah.
I would like, we find it in our pockets to make that happen. That's a big priority. I have found in other committees that I'm on in this community that it's a big missed opportunity for community members who can't read or engage with the material. So I think we need to make that happen, not if.
Yeah,
Sorry.
thank you.
It means more than you know.
Anyone on, either the committee members online have any questions?
Yeah, we're going to jump to the third question. And so somewhat related to community involvement, are there specific people, groups, or communities that we should be sure to contact to make this an inclusive process?
I'm sure there's lots of ideas here, and we are certainly not starting from scratch. But we definitely want to get your ideas about if there's any specific community groups that we should really make a concerted effort to reach. I don't want to that question out saying that we haven't done any research, but giving an opportunity for more ideas.
I guess maybe a better place to start would you tell us what groups you have down there already, and we can maybe tell you what you're missing.
Yeah, I don't have I put together a stakeholder list actually
Okay.
as part of a public involvement plan. I don't have the list seared in my brain, but there's certainly a number of categories that we look to engage. Everything from youth to the school district to utilities to goodness.
Isaac's gonna pull up the list, but yeah. We have the fire district, the library district, the school district. We also have the historical society, I believe, has a member, correct? Hispanic community. And then we have, let's see, the SDIC, so the Scappoose Drainage Improvement Company, Scappoose Bay Watershed Council, the Soil and Water Conservation District, ODOT. Tried to get a hold of a member of the railroad and was unsuccessful. So I think if we need railroad's input, we'll probably lean on ODOT to try and get that.
You're in good company, not getting feedback.
I know, I tried. I tried. I know I'm forgetting some, but
You got senior center.
senior center.
That would be
The Columbia Economic Team.
the drainage. district.
Yes, so yes, Paul Vogel, Columbia Economic Team would also be involved. OMEC,
Like
ECC,
in the drainage district, if we have.
Drainage District,
Habitat for Humanity.
Habitat for Humanity is also,
And check.
Would you like me to call Jerry Vest?
who's that?
He's the head of the railroad.
There you go.
Sure, yeah, call him.
County.
We literally, he
Columbia
called me after
County,
the,
also our DLCD state rep will also be an agency partner.
Any partners that would be, I guess, drainage district, but waterways with the river or anything along those lines?
Well, so the Scappoose Bay Watershed Council and also the Soil and Water Conservation District, their offices in St. Helens, but they cover it.
Anybody
you-
with like the port or the
Yeah.
county? Yeah, yeah.
Port also and the county also, correct.
Sports programs and targeting the actual participants, with that youth voice involved.
Yeah.
They're very centric to our community, lots of involvement there, so that would be great. High school club members have a point of contact, but President Grayson, you probably could point us in the right direction.
Yeah,
Boosters Club.
Boosters.
there's the leadership, like it's a student government kind of a thing at the high school, but like the teacher hat and me, I would love, you're talking about like teeing up emails and social media things. If there's a way to take any of that content and tee it up and actually create, I don't want to say like, let's create an assignment, but something that engages I think it's difficult some age ranges, but I would say like 7 through, or middle and high school at least. I don't want to say like, let's give them an assignment and see what we get out of it. But there is content that
Yeah.
can be, you know, talked about in a civics class or any sort of local government thing, or, you know, even a literacy assignment or something. Again, I didn't want to say the word assignment, but, you know, something where we can get like some really good feedback on these kids that are experiencing what our town is right now and maybe what they would hope it to be or what they see as.
That makes me so excited because some of the best work we've done when we do these visioning works is actually doing community conversation with high school kids.
Mhm.
We lean on civics, you know, humanities, or sorry, like student council
Yep.
or your civic leadership class or or AP, you know, U.S. history class. Essentially lead community conversations, which are focus group discussions, and kids can be in charge of taking notes of the discussion and maybe synthesizing it into ideas. Those have always been super, super fun, and those are really successful when we can connect with a teacher that would be willing to do a 30-minute open-ended focus group discussion with some guided questions.
Yeah, they could
So
do them
we-
with each other in class.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. We prepare content to be able to do those kinds of things kind of independently, and with our hope that we can get that kit, community conversations kit, in the hands of folks that are able to at least facilitate space and time to be able to have those discussions and then report back to us on what those were. So I very much appreciate that site, and I really want to.
Have you?
Hold
oh,
on,
sorry.
Bill Blank. Do you have a question, Bill?
Yeah, I do actually. And that is, you were putting out a lot of stakeholders and other people are involved. I don't know if it was mentioned because there were so many and they went by so fast, but Cycle Columbia County, you could add them. They're the cycling community of Columbia County.
I was also thinking that we might want to engage Northwest Trail Alliance since they have a significant trail system around here.
Absolutely. That's all I wanted to say, Scott.
Thank you.
So you've mentioned, you know, groups and agencies and different type of organizations, but what about, and I'm guessing probably the chamber, the South Columbia Chamber and CCET is representing small business, and you plan to have like a community type of meeting. Are you planning to have, say, just small, like just for business owners, a meeting for just business owners? Because the conversation can be different, I think, than the general public. I don't know if you've thought of that or if that's even.
Yeah, and so when I say, you know, list of stakeholders, there's a variety of ways we can engage those stakeholders. So we might not necessarily engage all of those stakeholders in the same way. Some of them will represent on the stakeholder advisory committee. Some of them will engage through community conversations. Hopefully they will take a survey. Hopefully they show up to an open house. I think that the list should be exhaustive, and then we should try to figure out what is the best method for reaching them, or activity. I think the community conversations kit is, I can talk a little bit more about that, but that basically allows us to have these conversations with all these various groups in kind of a smaller, more focused way, kind of where they meet to begin with. And so I think, you know, when it comes to meeting with small businesses, or you know, the chamber, we will likely need to rely on someone that, you know, is at the chamber or works with small businesses to be able to facilitate a focus group conversation or discussion, maybe at a regularly scheduled meeting they have, or carve some time out on an agenda they already have to be able to engage with them around some key visioning questions. But there are multiple ways that we can engage a variety of stakeholders, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the same way for each type of stakeholder. And we'll be looking to you if you have ideas of things that you think would work really well for certain groups, things that you think definitely just wouldn't work well, that we are very open to hearing that feedback.
Unity Action Team.
Did reach out to have them actually on the regular advisory committee. Dan Brown, who heads that up, has had staff shortages and doesn't feel like he can give that time. So we just moved them to an agency partner and told him, you know, we'll reach out to him when we need his specific experience, and he was good with that. So Habitat for Humanity will be part of the regular committee with Pat being, yeah, an agency partner.
Then faith-based organizations within the community. Lots of community networking involved there. Northwest Housing Authority. I don't know if Noah's involved.
If they ever get an executive director.
One, right?
Yeah.
Got me at when you were talking about the action team. No, just keep on brainstorming. Your own
So,
thoughts your way.
What about like, I was thinking Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, those organizations works.
Those are great. I've not had those on the list.
I would also include the Kiwanis. They're our only service organization in town at this point, as far as I understand. So they're not as active as they used to be, but they're still going, and I'm sure they want to be involved in some manner.
The Fountain was there.
Hmm?
Was it the Rotary? No, that was Rotary. Rotary, we might want to reach out to Rotary as well.
Yeah.
Rotary is Rotary. Excuse me. Rotary is Bill Scappoose and St. Helens, so we are part of that.
Columbia River Food Bank.
I was just,
So, yeah, good one.
This is such great input. So of course, some of these folks are going to be on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, but of course, there's a number of others. And some of these I see as really great stakeholders that hopefully we can reach someone who can host a community conversation with. So we'll probably work with staff to identify key contacts for all of these groups so that we can connect with them and set them up to help develop these.
to add on to what Counselor Lasowski said, when I was thinking of the food bank also, and then his faith-based community, I know that there's 2 churches in town that have weekly food bank opportunities. So they, have a pulse on people receiving and that distribution here just right in town.
Yay.
All the schools have a parent organization of some type, and at the high school, it's usually the boosters, and it's sort of extended beyond just parents.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Give you a good base and then
Awesome. Yeah.
have additional thoughts.
That's a
throw them
great-
your way
yeah.
later.
Everybody in town showing up.
Some of these would just be included with a survey or some sort of any distribution of information you had. That, they don't necessarily have to all them be sitting at the tables, kind of things.
Absolutely.
They probably a lot of would like to be more involved on the peripheral side of it.
Definitely.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Okay, so going back to the second question we have, what would make this project a success for you? Or put another way, what are some of your desired outcomes of the project?
Will this project deliver us a community master plan?
Well, it will deliver an updated comprehensive plan. So that's your comprehensive plan policies and comprehensive plan map and the zoning map and the development code. That what your question was on? What you mean about
Well,
it?
I'm most familiar with like master community plans
Sure.
traditionally. So if that language is similar to what you are saying we're going to get, then check. If it's different, please let me know.
So master plans to me are more of like a specific area that you're master planning for, or a
Well, if we're talking
plan-
about Scappoose,
we're
like
talking
what's our
about the-
master plan? Yeah, like
yes.
what?
So in that sense, sure. I think we're on the same
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, this will be a guiding document for us in our planning, our development, how we see ourselves, establishing our culture, our identity. Say that we don't have that as of today. We would like continuity, I think, in that as well. Agree that we use this as a tool for.
Bill? Bill Blank? Unmute
There we
yourself so
go.
we can,
Yeah, got to unmute myself. My thing is, if it's a 50-year plan, are we also looking at the population growth? Since we're next to a large metropolitan area, Portland, are we going to be sucked into it? What's going to happen as people grow and move out? So that's another thing I would like to know. How are we going to be prepared for what happens in the future for future growth?
It's a good question. So we do look at the population growth. The housing needs analysis that you're going through right now, it's using the population forecast from State University. So that determines the growth of residential land and population based on a conceptual level. And that's updated consistently. You'll have to update your H&A certainly, you know, however many years down the line. I can't remember if you're on the schedule or not with DLCD. Anyway, the consultant working with you on that will kind of talk you through that growth process. But then also part of this is the looking at the urban reserves and the urban growth boundary. And so, I mean, I'm not going to try to predict what's going to happen over the next 50 years with the Metro UGB and all of that. I don't think any of us could really exactly predict what's going to happen. But we will be doing our best to set the city up to have the best growth opportunities and evaluating the best growth opportunities that you can in the future. And you certainly can't ignore, you know, metro area and the effect that it has on your growth. So that'll just be a measured conversation and discussion about what you want to do.
I think the community probably is looking forward to keeping their own identity, so as much as possible.
I'm just
Okay.
wondering how much,
hold on, Pete was next.
That's not good.
Pete, go ahead.
Well, I have a hard time envisioning the document at the end and how valuable it's going to be. But I do think that what will be valuable is the process, and more so than anything document we have at the end that we're going to hang out there, and this is what we're going to look like in 50 years. Very good chance after 5 years, nobody will even know that document exists. I hate to say that, but that's the way it often happens. You know, if anybody could quote our mission statement now that we put a lot of time into, I'd be impressed. So I just say it's valuable, but I think the real value comes in the process.
Well, and the other pieces that you'll be developing are the comprehensive plan policies, which will help you make decisions,
Sure.
you know, immediately when that's done. You'll call on that and say, this is what our community wants, and here's this policy, you know how that works. Policy that references that, and it'll be behind you, you know, how for the next 50 years or until the next update happens.
We would also expect to, in addition to it just being, you know, an actual document that contains sort of an overview of the whole project and the different components that went into it, it also gets adopted into obviously our comprehensive plan and then into our development code. So for me as a city planner, there's could be some fairly significant changes that we make based on this work that go into the development code that would affect things right away.
Good, thank you.
So that's the other component to it. You know, we have a comprehensive plan that the general public usually doesn't see. I think, Marissa, you're asking about, you know, this master plan. We have that. It's a comprehensive plan, and it does speak to kind of every component within the city. We update it as we can, as we have projects and things. That being said, there's portions that are very outdated. So we're happy to have this time to update the portions we're going to be affecting here. But again, it's the really getting that into the development code where we see it on the ground.
Another advantage I can see is when we go looking for grants, you know, I can see this as being something favorable for us if we have this on record.
Mm-hmm.
that's how I see a plan would be, if 50 years is a long time, and we're no, you know, we can't foresee the future, and technology innovation is going to take into play 15 years from now. Vehicles are probably not going to be, you know, replace the gas station. I don't know, but what I see this plan is that we're able to have or pivot right, as we go along, or kind of embrace or bring in what technology is being in front of us? Is that something possible? Because I don't know if I see a plan, is it written in stone? Do we have to the ability to adjust it as innovation and technology, comes about? So you see that coming into play, or has it? Because you guys are dealing with 20 years, but like I said, 50 years.
So I think I want to follow up on that real quick on very specific on the future. You know, one of the things I do is I do drive Uber and Lyft in Portland. And when you look at master plans that were made 20 years ago, they don't account for this new way of getting around your town. So there's a lot of times where it's just going into a stadium or going into a place. How is the future and what we're going to do transportation wise? How's that going to change in 50 years? And how should we be looking at that as we're looking at our comprehensive plan, which is typically a 20-year plan, just like our master plans, and up to 50 years? What is that going to look like? And how do we start to pivot to look at that? Are there going to be gas stations, or are they going to be quick charge electrical stations? And where do we get the electricity from?
They're all great points. And I think the core of what you're getting at is sort of those specific examples, economic resilience and ability to change like that. And you can certainly write policies in a way that prioritizes those values. And then once, those unpredictable things come up, you can, take action in a way that adheres to that policy without having to predict like exactly what's going to happen.
The disruptors, what's going to disrupt the current
yes. Yeah.
flow of how things are going and change.
That was one of the questions we actually had to just clarify our understanding, because we noticed, in the RFP, there's a number of priorities that were identified, and we're going to be looking to you to help us kind of sift through those priorities and think, what we should be focusing on. And one of that was we saw the report on the use of technology in the planning process. And so I think we were happy to hear just a little bit more on your side what that sounds like. And it sounds like it's technology in the world, not necessarily in planning practice, or maybe both.
Well, I mean, we're working on the robotic lady. Please insert your plan
Take
here.
a robotic
Denied.
assistant.
Working on cloning.
So I think even our council member that just recently stepped down, his big issue with this whole thing and the thing was that he wanted to see someone that was a futurist come in and really kind of look at that future and where is the future as you design a community vision or a 50-year opportunities and comprehensive plan. How's the future going to impact that? I mean, setting these things based on what we're doing today doesn't make very much sense when we don't, it's better to be trying to look into the future and seeing what it's going to be like, and that's tough. But since things change faster and faster, I think it's easier with the speed of change versus the slowness of change, because we know it's going to change.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about in our interview when we were talking about a specific topic, and we have yet to fully form what this would look like, we have partnerships with, we work a lot with the Urbanism Next Center at University of Oregon, so we know people there we can talk to, and sort of get an understanding of, they study these specific topics all of the time. They're doing national research, and then work with a number of communities in the state. So we have access to those types of connections and can use that when it makes sense.
I intend to be sitting at a bench out there going, back when I was in.
That's gonna happen.
It will happen. He'll call in.
Abe Simpson.
Yeah.
Be here 50 years.
Yeah.
Oh, come on.
This
exercise that we're going to undertake, this could potentially then fold in the whole conversation of branding our community that was presented a couple months ago in terms of, is that?
Yeah, I think part of the community visioning is going to be part of that as well. Yeah, where are we going?
Going like, who are we as a
Yeah.
community? How do we want to brand ourselves? And sort of that lens to help shape, develop our community over the years. Is that?
Yeah, I think there's a component to that. What it doesn't do is specifically have a scope for them to actually brand the city, to come up with the theme for the city. That specific piece was something that the Urban Renewal Agency has been talking about doing and funding, which I think would be an excellent way to get at that. Because if we could do those a little bit in tandem with this, or at least have that running so that when we're going to adopt development code standards, if there are specific aesthetic criteria you want in the code, it would be great to have that all roll out at the same time.
But I do think it starts with the community visioning.
Correct. The vision will inform that process. Absolutely.
I was just going to talk about our council retreat, and we made our goals for the next year and, putting on their branding and marketing. And then we kind of had to go, whoa, that's not necessarily something we want to put a ton of energy in this year, because we need all of this work and that visioning and the urban renewal work to kind of come to a little more fruition this year. And then perhaps, because when it goes on a goal list, that's something you're working on during the year. And it's not quite there yet, because these are some of those big pieces we need first.
I can
It's not to
appreciate
say that
that.
we're not,
Yeah.
we're technically working on it.
Yes,
But-
correct.
but-
This is the precursor to
Exactly.
that. And I do appreciate your timing thoughts on that, because that makes a lot of sense. Because this spans 3 years, not doing it this coming fiscal year still works.
I was curious to understand, how do you see the current vision statement being a tool for, being a tool in helping craft maybe a new vision, if that's changed over the last 5 years or so?
Thank you so much for asking that. And that's actually a conversation that the staff and the consultant team are going to have very shortly. And I'm happy to open it up, but I'm actually quite curious from your perspective. I've received some materials about the 2016 vision, and I'm looking forward to kind of catching up on what that process was like, and how we can build from that, or just kind of help move things along a bit. And maybe this is a time, if you have particular reflections on that 2016 process, or even the vision statement itself, if there's things that ring true to you or fall flat, we definitely want to hear that, so that we understand kind of where we're starting from, knowing that a visioning process did occur in the city not too long ago, and we don't want to recreate the wheel, but we are certainly starting from this place. So I don't know if that's another question that I would love to have a conversation with you all about.
You were a part of it. Do you want
Yeah,
to kick it off?
part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
I want to hear everything.
right.
I don't think we have time.
Quickly sum it up, I think it was an organic experience that was a opportunity for our city to have a vision that wasn't necessarily captured. So it was, city citizens participated in the process, and ultimately was delivered to council. Council approved and adopted. I don't know if it's been used as a good resource over those periods of time, but at least it is a platform in which we can build on. I think, it's not, everything is perfect. So that's kind of the sweet, but if you want to email me and ask for more information, Alex was also involved a little. Well, it was mostly Michael that was.
It was Michael and actually one of our first interns, Nick. Yes.
That's right.
So that actually, I wasn't as directly involved with that piece, but
We already did this one. We've already talked about this one.
I'd just like to say, I didn't quite have a vision of this being updated as we went along. You know, it was a gap missing in my thinking. But I think that's really important, that we have periodic updates and it is somewhat formalized so that it's not something just out there in the future, but after 10 years, we actually figure out a way to look at where we are with this vision and update ourselves. It's
So,
not one of the things that's pressing at the moment, so it's going to be hard to do, just in the fact that we're going to want to do things that are pressing because that's nature. But this will be something that I think is important, even though not pressing.
we're just going to say on the vision is that I consider that the starting point, kind of. We already have that. I mean, I don't think you throw it out the window and just start from scratch. We've got that. And I think you does through it and say, does this really still have the meaning that it was 5 years ago? Or is there some new vision the community has adopted? And does this encompass everything that we're looking for? And I think that Brandon would be a great resource since he served on the committee. Work with you as well as Mike Sykes. We are starting to run out of time though.
So I think our last question was just about those deliverables that were in the RFP, and I think we got some clarity on the technology piece. The urban tree canopy study that was referenced, do you all have, was there conversations in council or have specific goals in mind of what that would be?
This guy again.
I think science would show as we look at our future development, looking at heat island effect, also about water retention, soil conditions, all these things that would be kind of the measurables that we could utilize in best coming up with a 50-year plan around our development and zoning and whatnot. So one, you have to kind of have a starting point. What do we have? Are there things that we want to potentially incentivize to increase our tree canopy when future development occurs, because we could quantify what that particular environmental asset, right, is going to provide to a site, to a developable land.
Yeah, that's all we have. Any other final thoughts or questions for us?
No, thank you very much for
For your
coming
time.
out tonight and presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're very
Thank
excited.
Well done.
Here too.
Thanks for taking the challenge on.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we'll go ahead and end the work session. We'll come back and start the